People don't realize it, but most people's high functioning skills are rooted in their dysfunction. Steve Jobs, right? He was given up by his biological parents. He always dealt with, am I worthy? His whole, I need to dent the universe, I need to do something important and profound, was overcoming that emotional issue of, do I matter? Am I important? And I think that is part of my drive too. You know, having my mother walk out the door and you having to vie for love and attention from your father. This whole idea of, is this worthy? And I want to do whatever it takes to assure that what I put out is worthy, to a point where it's overproduced. Don't fight it, like, appreciate it. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I've had this driving force to have to seek significance my whole life. Because I've had to seek significance, we're going to impact 1.5 billion people this year through our work because of the drive to be significant. I'm still driving from this childhood issue, basically. Right. And now I embrace it. Now it's like, yeah, this is great. It's fuel.
Hey man, what an honor to be here today. It's your beautiful home.
Yeah. Thank you, man. It's been so long. It's been so long.
I know.
I've missed you.
I've missed you too.
I don't know why we haven't crossed paths up for the last few years, but I'm glad you're here.
Well, we stay in touch, and I definitely follow all the amazing things you're doing. Beautiful place, though. You gave me the tour.
You're like one of the first people to see it.
Yeah.
Besides our camera guy, Aaron here, who does all of our Darren Dailies, as I mentioned to you. You're like one of the first people to actually see the inside. We just finished the remodel about a month ago.
Well, you talked about, you were showing me some strategic places in the house.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you spend 99% of your time at these 4 places.
Yeah.
Do you mind just for the listeners? Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the law of leverage, right? You know, 80-20, right? And then there's 64-4, and then there's 52-1%. Like, so you literally spend 90% of your life in a home and about 1% of the space. So you think about your spot at the dining table, your side of the bed, your spot on the couch or your favorite chair, and in my situation, my office here. So literally those add up the square footage there in those 4 or 5 places, and it's less than 1%. So that means that instead of spending money on couches and fluffy pillows in rooms that people, rarely go into, put a lot of money in quality and comfort in those 4 or 5 places. Like, make those awesome. Make your bed and mattress and cooling system and blankets and pillows awesome. You're going to spend 8 hours of your life every day. You're talking about a third of your entire existence on this planet is going to be spent in that spot, right? And then the amount of hours that I log at my desk, that chair is a crazy expensive chair. But if you were to sort of like a, per mile, like per hour,
right?
It's cheap,
right?
I should have paid more, right? And that's why my desk is awesome. I always have the latest technology. Like, even if I don't need a new computer, I get a new computer at least every 18 months because, technology is like dog years.
Right.
A year in the real world is 7 years in technology, because I log an amazing amount of hours on that computer. So it should be optimized for maximum productivity, for maximum output. So anyway, that's the whole theory.
We could spend 30 minutes on this.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, it brings up a couple of questions. So do you fly first class for that same reason? Mm-hmm. I know I do, because I get a lot of work done on a plane.
Yeah.
Because there's distractions, right? When you're at your office, different places, but you're on a plane, you get to just focus.
Yeah. It's one of those things like you aspire to in life. It's
right.
Like, what are a few things you never want to have to do again?
Right.
And I said, I never want to have to fly coach again. But you can't start there.
Right.
I didn't start there in my 20s. I had to do whatever it took to get to the next destination so that I could keep hustling, and trying to accomplish whatever I'm trying to accomplish. But if you're going to use your resources, use it in ways that maximize lifestyle and for your particular interests. Like, for some people, that might not be how they're going to gain the greatest lifestyle benefit. But for me, in travel and trying to reduce resistance points, like, it's one of the things that I think about a lot is like, how do I reduce resistance points in my life so that I could stay in the zone of where my art is, right? I learned this from Paul J. Meyer, my mentor, Paul J. Meyer.
Right.
And he said, where do I have resistance points? Where do I end up doing things that don't maximize what I'm here to do on this planet? Like, what my mission is, what my genius is. And so he had Paul was an amazing guy, but he had this incredible lifestyle. He, owns half the Cayman Islands. He had a whole Ford car collection. He had homes all over the place. He had all these amazing luxuries, but the only thing he had that I envied was he had people to remove all these resistance points. So he had somebody cut his fruit and have it out in the morning, lay out his vitamins. He had somebody set up his desk for the morning. Wow. He had somebody bring in his lunch. He had a person who was just a photo librarian. So all the photos that he would take, they just organized his photos, into photo albums and then digitized them and made sure that the people who were in them got copies and so forth. And so he just found all these ways to remove resistance in his life so that he could stay in his genius mode. And as a result of it, the guy had 200 companies. He became wealthy beyond belief, and he had a huge impact on the planet. I mean, the guy, I don't know that anybody to this day has sold more personal development material than Paul J. Meyer.
Right.
$2 billion. I mean, I don't know around the world if anybody's done more than $2 billion. And it was only because he focused on how to remove resistance.
And what's interesting is he was a bit controlling, but he knew how to delegate. Like I remember he told me, he's like, inspect what you expect.
Right.
Right. And so he was very much about that. And you and I in Georgia went to his funeral together, right? And the auditorium, the Baylor Arena where they played basketball was the Paul J. Meyer Auditorium.
Yeah, he paid for the gold dome on it.
Yeah. And he also did a lot of philanthropic things no one even knows about.
Unbelievable. Very generous, amazing guy. And then, remember the montage we watched at his funeral? That was kind of like a montage of his life.
Right.
And my great takeaway was, holy shit, I'm not doing enough. This guy lived 30 lifetimes in one life. Like he, Jim Rohn would say that the purpose of this grand adventure is to see what all you can do with all you've been given.
Right.
And Paul did all he could with all he was given, and he made a profound impact as a result of it. So he was very, very aspiring to me. And it wasn't just in business. He was an amazing husband, an incredibly giving father, a fantastic mentor. So he was a tremendous friend.
Right.
He was an adventurer.
Right.
And he just, a beautiful spirit. He was just a bright light in the room. I mean, you walk with Paul, even if he was in his 80s, you had to kind of do a slight jog to keep up with him. Just a Energizer bunny, He was amazing, amazing soul. So,
yeah, I went and spent 2 days with him. I think it was 1996 at his home. His library, incredible, right? Like a 6,000, everything perfectly organized. We've talked about OCD. He was, very much an organizational guy. But I get back home, and within a few days, I had this thick prayer journal, leather bound, totally personalized, Kyle. And it was some conversations we had.
Yeah.
And, he sent it to me. And, Paul was very aggressive, young. He talks about, he was a very type A, demanding, and it cost him a little bit with his kids. And I know some people that don't like Paul because he was a very shrewd guy. But he went full circle, right? And towards the end of his life, it was all about legacy and making a difference. And personally, even showing up at the homeless shelter and talking to people individually.
I think people get a bad rap on that. Like another friend of mine is Dave Lineberger, who's the founder of Remax, and people would say that he is aggressive. He's audacious. And certainly he's aggressive. And that's if you're going to do what hasn't been done, if you're going to create the impossible, if you're going to survive in the bare knuckle brawl that is the competitive marketplace. Yeah, you're going to have to be aggressive.
Sure.
But like Paul, Dave is a guy that if you're on the wrong side of the fight, it's going to be ugly for you.
Right.
But if you're his ally, if you're a friend, the guy's one of the greatest, most generous people I've ever met. Tender-hearted.
Right.
Most generous. I mean, beyond belief than what people even know. Paul's the same way.
Right.
So I remember, he bought my company. So we're negotiating for the purchase of the sale, and he's being aggressive. It's business, right?
And this is what, 1997, 98?
9.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember, he kind of sent his attorney, right? After, and I remember writing Paul a letter with a personal appeal. He changed like that.
Wow.
He gave me everything I wanted without any argument whatsoever from that point forward.
Wow.
So, an exterior in the marketplace, it is a battle of competitive wills. Right. But really, when it comes down to it as a human being, a lot of these people that people think are so overbearing and aggressive are actually doing what they need to do to have created what they've created and to survive, in the wild that is the marketplace. But as a result of having gotten to where they've gotten and gotten their butt kicked and been humbled, like the most successful people in the world are the ones who have failed the most, unquestionably.
Right.
The only way to get to success is through the gauntlet of failure. So they've gotten through the gauntlet, they're on the other side. But that has also tenderized them,
right,
so to speak, right?
I would agree. There was an evolution with Paul, so, self-admittedly. He would talk about he had anger, and his mom would give him to subtly lay books around the house and was all these subtle things and saying, hey, listen, son, you're very aggressive and you have these tendencies. And you and I both met Larry, right? Larry was kind of a young Paul Meyer going through, what Paul did. And Larry was a take no prisoners kind of guy. And I think Paul just evolved over time, and which is part of even Andrew Carnegie. I'm going to spend the first half of my life creating wealth, and I'm going to give it all away.
Right. Andrew was an asshole. Not people to realize this, but he was a real prick. I mean, he mistreated his employees. And took one of them out and had him shot in the back 40.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Watch the Men Who Built America.
Okay.
Fantastic documentary about Carnegie and about Rockefeller and about the other finance guy. All these men who were part of the industrial changeover that basically kind of founded the wealth of America.
Right.
And Carnegie, was not a good guy along the way, a little unnecessarily
so you
heartless.
You can't even blame that on generational differences back then, right? If you take someone out and shoot them.
Right. It's a little far, right? Yeah. But, it again, who knows?
Right.
Who knows what the dynamics of the time were and all that. So.
Exactly. So, hey, we met back in 1994, I want to say.
Yep. November 1994. I remember the day.
Okay. Wow. And that was, TPN. I had brought in all the speakers, Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, Les Brown, Mark Victor Hansen, and these guys. And you were the young guy who was a big part of building that company. Mm-hmm. And that's when you first heard Jim Rohn.
I was there to meet you.
Okay.
So November 1994, Harvey Hotel. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I don't remember a lot because life can be a blur when you're kind of always thinking about the future, right? But I remember that day. It was a rainy day. I remember getting my shoes soaked in the parking lot on the way in and feeling it for the rest of the day. And I had an overcoat on. And so I was there to meet you. And the event was still going on. And so I went in to wait for you to sit in the back of the room. I'd never heard of Jim Rohn before, so didn't have any particular affinity, of course.
Sure.
So I'm in the back of the room, and here's this wiry-haired guy leaning over a lectern, his glasses down at the end of his nose. And I remember like it was yesterday, he asked the audience, how many of you here want to have more? Raise your hand. How many here want to have more? And I instinctively raised my hand in the back of the room.
Okay.
And so I'm going, okay, because I'm a student, right? And so I pull out I had a little notepad in the coat jacket, and I pull out, okay, what is it going to tell me to do? And I'm thinking, Jesus, what else can I do? Because at that point I was working 7 days a week, and I was putting in 16, 18, whatever I was bleeding out of my pores, what can I possibly add? And there's one thing that I was taught in my childhood from my father, who was a university football coach, was you can beat anybody at anything if you just outwork them.
Right.
You just out hustle them. Right. And so that was my one go-to success strategy at that point, was just to outwork everybody else around me. So I'm thinking I can't possibly add another thing, but tell me what I got to do, on top of what I'm doing. And he said, if you want to have more, you have to become more. And that was a twist of logic that kind of changed the trajectory from that moment forward. What do you mean become more? You know, what you pursue eludes you. It's who you become, then you attract the success that you seek based on the person you become. And I was like, that instead of the doing, here's what I need to do next, it was who do I need to become next in order to get what it is that I want? How do I earn my way into being worth what it is that I want by the person I become? And so that really kind of amplified my personal development journey. Like that one moment, and then we met, and yeah, you were the guy that brought the whole speaker network together to put the programming in play. I mean, you're the one with all the relationships, and so yeah, you were the big kahuna. I was there to meet, but that was also the time, unexpectedly, that I first met Jim Rohn, and that started a lifelong love affair, really.
Which says a lot about you, because Jim Rohn was very philosophical, right? He was not a tactic kind of guy. Now, he believed in tactics, obviously, and you don't become successful without tactics. But he was philosophically driven. In fact, I was with Dennis Waitley yesterday, and Dennis told a story I'd never heard about Earl Nightingale. And he's like, we're in the back of a room. This is before The Psychology of Winning ever came out. I don't know what year that was, but the 70s. And Earl, or it's 1981, he said. And Jim Rohn was speaking. And Earl said, look at this guy. He's not jumping up and down. He's not screaming. He's not down on his knee, but he's captivated the audience. He said, you don't have to do all that stuff. Follow this guy.
And that's what I loved about Jim.
Yeah.
I loved about Jim that very fact, is it wasn't about antics. It wasn't theater. It wasn't platform performance. It was a mindset. It was philosophy. You see, at that point, all I knew was the world I experienced up to that point. And, you know, I was born into a kind of a nut situation. My parents divorced when I was 18 months old. My mother walked out the door, never looked back. My dad, 24 years old when I'm born, right? So he's just a kid. And he had just moved from the Bay Area, where all his family was, to New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico, to take a job as a university football coach. And my dad was like, you know how we have a small percentage of Neanderthal in all of us?
Right.
He was like 90% Neanderthal, you know, just super alpha male. I mean, he was the guy on Full Metal Jacket, you know, the Sergeant Gunnery.
Right.
That was my father. And that's the way he coached football, by just demoralizing people so that they could then be challenged to get better, to earn his respect. And it was just kind of, you know, but from that, and that's where I learned that hard work and all the rest of that. Then he got into sales, then he got into real estate sales, and he just always on teetering on bust, right? We can't get you new shoes for school until this commission check.
So he was
cashes.
doing that in addition to coaching?
This is after, when we moved back to California.
So he wasn't coaching then.
No,
he was trying to make it as sales guy,
in sales
entrepreneur.
and real estate, right? But it was always, he was also very negative and cynical and complained about this, that, or the rest, and struggled, right? And so that's all I knew life to be. This was, okay, this is what I got to do. You only know what you see, right? You start mimicking and modeling your reference points. So that's all I knew. And it wasn't until 18 when I went to my first personal development seminar where I saw the possibility of a whole other world.
Right.
A whole other world of abundance and capabilities, and being able to achieve beyond one's upbringing. And Jim, the reason why I resonated so much with Jim, to get back to Jim, is that because he was so philosophical, because it was about a philosophy, it was about a mindset, it expanded all that I had known from up to that point in my life. He expanded the capabilities. He expanded the attitude and philosophy that one can have that can take you to a completely different place than the constraints of your upbringing. So he was the grandfather I never had.
Okay.
Right? I had a grandfather who was a World War II fighter pilot, but the guy was like, if you grunted, that was the most you were getting out of him, and no affinity. So it was like, I have much of my success to thank for two people in particular. One is my father, because he taught me that work ethic. And
Right.
he took on the burden of raising me when even my mother wouldn't do it. And he did all that he had to do in order to make that possible. But he could only bring me to a certain point. And when I was sitting in the back of the room at that event, I was at his ceiling
Right.
for all that he had taught me.
Right.
I couldn't go any further. I couldn't work any harder. And that wasn't going to gain me any more success. I couldn't do it anymore. Jim brought me the rest of the way. He was the guy that took me from there to here. Do you understand? Like it
Totally.
expanded my capability that I didn't know existed until the love affair with Jim.
So what makes it so special and unique to me is having been on the side of, watching the thousands of success stories and testimonials, but knowing the tens of thousands of people that have sat in the rooms, right? Not everyone has the success story. And I think, Darren, you're incredibly talented, and I'll talk to you a little bit later about what your secret sauce is. But here's a guy that had already accomplished a lot in real estate, top 1%, age 20, and yet very entrepreneurial. And you hit this ceiling. Most people wouldn't have had the ears to hear what you were hearing. So the timing was right. But so I want to talk about this little word called serendipity. Just curious, because just about everyone I've talked to that's ever been successful had these fork in the road, serendipitous moments, and I'm included. I didn't know who Jim Rohn was. If I'd gone to a goals event, what do you want to do? Couldn't have said run Jim Rohn International because I didn't know who he was, right? But there's these serendipitous things that have happened. How's that played into your life, that whether it's mentors or conversations or hearing Jim and that taking you down a road?
Yeah. I think that if there's one thing I wish I had a pill for that I could just dispense, like what's the missing ingredient for most people, why they don't live up to their potential, is if I could bottle and put in pill form desire and this appetite for growth mindset. I don't know why people don't seek out new ideas and information. I don't know why they don't have a constant, never-ending pursuit for the next inspiration, the next idea. I don't know why their awareness isn't looking around and seeing how the words on a billboard or lyrics of a song don't strike them for the ideas that they're working on to advance their progress on their hero's journey. I don't know why people don't hear the words that somebody says that could have a effect on their life and then do something with it. So that's number one. The other thing is, serendipity is looking back at history and then making it make sense. I think we're constantly, we're on a path, and there's always, we're faced with forks in the road all day, every day.
Right.
And so there is a multitude of paths that we can take through life. So it's not like this one fork of the road and then it went this way. There's hundreds of little decisions along the way every day that is changing the trajectory of that. So it's not like one or two, three defining moments. It is a constant defining reality with every choice and decision that you're making along the way. So, and then the third way I would answer that is the way that Jim Rohn answered it. When somebody said, Jim, I just want to thank you. You've changed my life. You've been the one that has been my inspiration. And, and because of this, I've created all these results. And Jim said, well, I appreciate that. He said, but really, I was just the last person you heard when you decided to change your own life.
Yeah.
And so I don't know why people aren't deciding to change their own life. Right. I don't know why they're not listening to what is around them, that it's giving them the information in order to change their trajectory. I don't know why they don't. Like, if I could solve that mystery, I could solve the mystery of all life itself when it comes to human performance.
Right.
That's the one thing I don't understand. I don't know why some people don't want.
And Jim Rohn would say that as well, right?
Yeah.
It's like
mysteries of the mind.
Yeah. And you can't figure it out, right?
Yeah. Don't belabor it. Just, keep casting your seeds, keep putting out the good the good words,
Right.
and some will get it and some won't. And,
And
you
you
know,
can't, you don't have a lot of say in that. Who
Right.
gets it and who doesn't.
right.
So you and I have a lot of history together. There's a lot of things we won't get around to today. But one was when I sold my companies, the people that bought it were Success, and you became the publisher of Success. And we would have dinner a lot. You'd come to Dallas, we'd go out to dinner. And what really struck me, Darren, more than any person I know, was your curiosity. I mean, you were very intentional. Every conversation was intentional. You're a great question asker, right? Like massively good at that. And so tell me, what do you think your secret sauce is? I know Darren the entrepreneur. I know Darren the marketer, Darren the personal development guy, but you solve problems really quickly too. It's like you take data in and you come up with really good answers. So it's hard for me you have a lot of things. If you had to pick one thing,
It is that. And here's why.
Okay.
So being raised by a university football coach father, his love language was achievement.
Okay.
The only way you got love or attention from my dad was to achieve. And if
Okay.
you didn't achieve, it was a dark, cold place to live under his shadow. And so he was my roots to the universe. He was the only person I had to depend on for even survival. All I wanted to do in life was to make this man proud, right? So it was what became the engine of my pursuit for greater and greater success. So I have that to thank him for, right? It was part of what stoked the fire of that burning desire. And then there was a point, and I talk about it, I think, in the Entrepreneur Roller Coaster book, where I graduated from wanting to please him to wanting to pursue my own passions for my own interests, not for what would make him proud. But for a long while there, it was literally rooted in what can I do to make my dad proud? And that propelled a lot of my early success, propelled my success up through real estate and till the point that we probably had met. So in school, it was really important to my dad that you were successful, that you got good grades.
Okay.
And quite frankly, I wasn't naturally intelligent or brilliant, right? And my student peers were. And that didn't matter. You still had to get an A.
Okay.
You still had to be at the top of the class. So I had to figure out how to go out and see what already had been done and draw from a myriad of reference points, and then pull the key pieces and then reassemble it and repackage it in my personality and voice in order to submit it forward to get the A. It wasn't going to be an original, brilliant, creative, insightful answer of my own. I was going to draw on the resources out in the world and then repackage it to submit it as my work. And so it was a hack for a shortcoming. And you'll realize that a lot of people's greatest strengths, what they think are superpowers, innate gifts, divinely inspired, it's not. It's a hack to overcome a dysfunction.
Yeah, for sure.
So like Richard Branson, who is known to be massively focused.
Right.
The guy has ADHD.
Right.
And he's dyslexic. So he built in these systems in his life to overcome that dysfunction. And now, as a result of having built those and having to be dogmatic about sticking with them because of his dysfunction, now he is massively focused and known to be a focused, my number one go-to person as an example for focused productivity. But it was a hack for a dysfunction. So my ability to piece together take complex issues,
Right.
pull the most important bits, find out what is its rudimentary, it's fundamental, it's source code, and all these things, and then assemble it together, make it simple, and then re-communicate it in my voice is my superpower, but it is the hack for overcoming my dysfunction.
And there's so much there. Wow. So again, what you're talking about is almost like a very left brain type of skill set, but you're one of the best communicators I've ever met. And you've always been a phenomenal communicator. Even at age 22 or 3 when we met, you were phenomenal from the stage. So again, just interesting marrying those two skill sets. So you talked about your dad was negative, right? And your mom had left early. And the ability to think strategically and figure things out oftentimes has a little bit of a judgmental component to it, right? Where we say, okay, I hear that politician, that's all BS. I hear this marketer, that's BS. In the midst of all that background, that skill set, how have you remained so positive? Like you have such a positive upbeat. And I think about that at the dinners. You were always uber positive, even though it wasn't Pollyannic. I mean, it was so intentional because you could tell, you know what's going on, but you've chosen to be positive. Where did that come from?
I'm going to give you an answer that Jim Rohn would give.
Okay.
Somebody comes up to Jim and says, Jim, how do you stay so motivated?
Right.
You're always so motivated. And he says, well, I go to all these seminars. So how am I so positive? Because I continue to fuel my mind with what's positive.
Okay.
I continue to feed my mind the references of what's possible.
And that's important, you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I am my father's child.
I think you could gravitate to
No doubt.
because you see the BS,
No doubt.
right? Yeah.
No doubt. Yes. Also because I do kind of see through a lot of that.
That's
So
what I mean.
I could be very critical and
Right.
judgmental and see it
And
for
we've
what
had
it
those
is.
conversations in the past.
no doubt.
We both can kind of go there, but it doesn't serve us well, right? It doesn't serve me to be the smart guy that sees everything.
Right.
Versus, wow.
Right. So I have to continue to flush my mind with what's possible and what's hopeful and what's abundant and the progress of forward. And when I'm in groups, I'm trying to advance something. So advancement's positive. It's not negative.
Right.
Advancement's positive. So I'm always going to try to encourage the dialogue and the discussion and the brainstorming or the thinking in a positive direction, which is only going to be supported by what's positive, right? So, I use the analogy all the time that, our mind's like an empty glass and the world around you is very, very negative. It's very negative, particularly with sensational news media. And it's like pouring Diet Coke into your glass. And now all of a sudden your mind is dark and muddy and muddled. And so, of course, you can only see what's negative and you can only see that it's dangerous and you can only see what to be afraid of when you're looking through a mind that is been filled with what's dark. And so the only way to fix that, because you can't pour it out, is to flush it with clean, clear water, to flush it with ideas of inspiration, with positivity, with personal development, which is the reason why I would listen to Jim Rohn's Challenge to Succeed that you put together over and over and over again, to the point where I probably heard him tell his stories more than he told them, which means that I could tell his story in some cases better. I could be words ahead of him when he's retelling the story, right? And it wasn't that I was there to learn anything new. I'd heard it before.
Right.
I'd registered it, right? But it was just a flushing mechanism of my mind. Because no matter, you take a glass and you pour water into it and it'll flush, it'll end up clear.
Right.
But then you go back out in the world and Wolf Blitzer's on CNN in the airport and
Right.
Diet Coke's getting in your glass. And if you don't go back to flushing it, it'll end up dark and dirty again. And you'll start seeing, all the negativity and, all the sarcasm and all the fear and all the things to be, that are dangerous and so forth. So it's purposeful. You have to work at being positive.
Right.
And your mind will absorb whatever it is that you feed it. And that will end up becoming what it sees in the world around you. What you feed it is programming it what to look for. So you feed it negative, even if it's by accident. You got negative relatives, negative friends, negative, conversations, negative news, negative, television and so forth. It's going to start looking at the world negatively. So you have to proactively flush. You have to proactively put what's positive and hopeful and abundant into your mind to flush that. And so it's never ending. It's like sweeping the floors. You can't sweep the floors once and call it done.
Right.
As soon as you put the broom away, dust starts falling.
Yeah.
You're going to have to come back and sweep again.
Right.
So that's the mind.
So talking about rinsing reminds me of hearing you talk about, you do these steps and then you rinse and repeat, right? You don't have to know 1,000 things. Your focus on simplicity Is any of that from a Jim Rohn influence, or do you think that's just naturally something that is your philosophy, or you've developed that? Like, keep it simple, what's the most important things, and then rinse and repeat versus trying to do 1,000 things.
I'd say two things to that. One is that it is the reason why I gravitated towards Jim.
Okay.
Is Jim made the complex simple. And it's the opposite of the way most gurus do it. They purposely make things more complex in order then to make you dependent upon them for the next answer.
Right.
And so the scientific breakthrough, the neurology of this and the NLP of that, and it's purposely complex so that you never completely grasp it, and you got to go back to them for further answers.
And it doesn't mean it's not true. It's just 80%.
Right.
These half a dozen make up 80% of your results.
And Jim did the opposite. I remember him saying, at the end of your talk, you don't want them to say, great speech, because you dazzled them with your brilliance. You want them to say, I think I can do that.
Right.
And that principle has guided what I do every single time. I don't want them to go, wow, how impressive he is, or how brilliant that was. I want them to go, I think I can do that. Yeah. My goal is to have you say, have it be explained and packaged so that it's so simple and it's so actionable clearly that you now feel empowered to be able to do it. So that is the first thing about what I learned from Jim, is make things so that it is accessible, so that people are empowered by it, not overwhelmed and, deluged by it.
Right.
The second thing is what I learned from Richard Branson, and the opposite. So you talked about, at one point I wanted to, you look for models, right? Who do you want to be? And I was like, oh, Richard's awesome. Like, look at the guy. He's long flowing locks, and he kite surfs with models. He's got his own private island. The guy's just, and he's
always happy,
happy, right? You're like, I want to be Richard Branson. Then I got to know Richard, and Richard, with 400 companies, has at any one time 125 lawsuits pending that he's named in personally,
right? Just
by the sheer nature of how business works, right?
Right.
And Richard can throw stuff against the wall, and what sticks and what doesn't stick, and he's fine with that. He can navigate himself in complexity, and with 125 lawsuits, and not have it ruined his day or good time at all. I realized I'm not wired like that.
Yeah.
I would rather do a few things with excellence than a lot of things, even if it is at the cost of not being worth $4 billion, right? And so I realized that I'm more interested in the art, in the excellence of it, and how I feel about what I put out, than just putting out more for the sake of scale.
Right.
So he taught me what my nature was.
Right.
And my nature wasn't complexity, doing a lot, driving things for the purpose of just great scale. That my nature was a few things done with great quality, with great excellence, that I'm proud of, that I can keep my arms around, and I can maintain my cognitive, mental, emotional, psychological, psychology, because I can keep my arms around ensuring that it is excellent.
And you're very fastidious about that, and that's got to be a huge temptation. So, congrats to you for maintaining that. The more success you have, the more opportunities that flow your way. So again, we have a lot of history together. Back in 2006, 2007, you were helping me with my company doing consulting and really gave me phenomenal advice. And I think that was before then, I asked you to come into TSTN to run that company with Mark Sparks. And when we were putting that together, you and I, again, we'd been together for a long time, but just figuring out the logo, figuring out what we were going to do. There was such a perfectionism almost with how you saw things in such a pristine way, right? And so, and I have witnessed that really serving you well. You know, I talk about, and you're a phenomenal marketer. When you think about marketing, the number one principle, and I might have learned this from you, Darren, I think I inherently always did this, but the number one marketing principle is create a great product. Number two, have great customer service. You know, number three, be relational and consistent. You know, not figure out how you can do all these tactical things. Now, tactical things are important, right? But the core things are create something great. And I think more than anybody I know, that is your philosophy and your deep-seated belief. And that's how you've created what you've done.
Yeah.
You went at a slow pace. Like, again, people think they have to come out the door, but I've watched you build this company, and you were very patient and you did it right. You had the right rhythm. And then over time, it just starts to compound, right?
You know, you can always look back and go, wow, I'm so freaking smart. Look at all these brilliant things and decisions that I made. But I, you know, if I think, well, why am I that way? I think I'm that way because, you know, I've, like Steve Jobs, right? He was given up by his biological parents, and he always dealt with, am I worthy? Am I significant? His whole, I need to dent the universe, I need to do something important and profound, was overcoming that emotional issue of, do I matter? You know, am I important? You know, seeking significance. And I think that is part of my drive too. You know, having my mother walk out the door and you having to vie for love and attention from your father. And so this whole idea of, is this worthy? And I want to do whatever it takes to assure that what I put out is worthy, right? And to a point where it's overproduced. Like, it's more important to me that everything I put out, I can psychologically and emotionally be convinced it is excellent. And I won't put anything out if it's not excellent. And you would go like, oh, that's so principles. You're so patient. I think it's in response to this driving issue.
Right.
So a lot of times the people don't realize it, but most people's high functioning skills are rooted in their dysfunction.
Right.
Don't fight it, like, appreciate it. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I've had this driving force to have to seek significance my whole life. Because I've had to seek significance, we're going to impact 1.5 billion people this year through our work because of the drive to be significant, to have a positive impact. Why do I want to have a positive impact? So that I feel worthy. Because I'm still driving from this childhood issue, basically. Right. And now I embrace it. Now it's like, yeah, this is great. It's fuel. You know, a lot of times your adversities are your advantage. Like, stop condemning your adversities. They're your advantage, and embrace them and realize where it's coming from. Like, that's the real root of it. So, like, one of my principles is I will not put out a product unless I absolutely, in my heart of hearts, know that if you spend money for it, you will gain 10 to 1.
Right.
You will have a direct line of sight. For every dollar you give me, I know with the application of 10% of it, you'll get 10 times your investment. So I'll give you, for instance, we have I have my CEO forum, the High Performance Forum, and it's 12,500. And unquestionably, you can't be in the room an hour and not be able to turn that into a 6-figure return. And we do it for 2.5 days. Okay, I did an elite version of that, and it was $25,000 a year for 2 years. So you're spending $50,000.
Right.
And I knew, based on what it was that I was going to bring to them and the way that the whole thing was facilitated, unquestionably, it's going to be an increase of $500,000. I know, and it happened every time. We could quantify and measure it.
If you have the right people in the room.
The whole thing has to be right.
Right.
Right people, right facilitation,
yeah,
right environment, all that.
Right.
But then at the end of 2 years, I kill it. It's like, we're done. I want to end up, Jim Rohn also said, you want to end up here, not down here, right?
Crescendo, right?
Yep. Yeah. You want to end at the peak.
Yeah.
So I would cut it off. And even they wanted to keep going. But the energy wasn't as, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, no. I decide when Elvis leaves the building, right?
Okay, right.
So But these guys are like, we'll pay $100,000 if you'll just put a group together. I'll pay, and it's like 10 times $1 million. I can't convince myself that I know that everybody in the room, I'm going to be able to put $1 million in their bank account. It's up to them,
Right.
and they want to pay just to have this experience.
The community of people too.
The community of
Great
people,
right?
and they'll be affected in ways that they might not be able to measure necessarily. But I don't want the burden.
Right.
I don't want the emotional, psychological burden that I place on myself. This is totally me.
Right.
That I got to produce a 10-to-1 in value. And again, I can package it by saying it's a commitment to excellence. And that's just who I am. I'm about quality. But the truth is that I'm making sure that I'm still worthy.
Right.
And what I put out is worth it. I'm still covering for my a potential imposter syndrome.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
And I'm not trying to defend that when I say what I'm about to say.
No, yeah.
No, but I think you also have an awareness of, what helps you sleep at night. And you don't want to carry other people's, because I do the same thing. Like and we did this with Jim Rohn International. I did a price where it was fair value, but at the same time, if it's on you if you don't take full advantage of it. If you charge an extreme, then I think you do have a higher level of having to explain why.
Right.
You price it
and an expectation,
and
an unspoken expectation from those that paid the money.
And I want to go back to the analogy talking about Stephen Jobs and things like that. So I think, again, having known you, conversations, you have always been on a search how to balance this ambition, this work ethic. So it's the awareness that makes it work. I love what you talked about. It's like, okay, you know who you are, you know why you do what you do, and you flow with it. But the awareness is what makes it work.
Yeah.
Because we know some people that haven't had the awareness because they didn't go search.
Right.
They didn't go dig. I've watched you do that. You've said, hey, I'm a workaholic. Hey, I'm going to spend 100 days this year not on a phone, not doing those type of things. But that doesn't mean you're going to stop doing what you do. You've learned to and I think awareness is a huge key to anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And my awareness to what I need to do is ambition is a double-edged sword.
Right.
It drives you to fulfill your purpose, as Jim would say, to see what all you can do with all you've been given, right? The aim of life is productivity. So it drives you, so it's positive. But it can also drive you out of your life.
Right.
It can have you pursuing too many projects. It can have you starting too many businesses. It can have you saying yes to too many opportunities. And then you're beholden to those. Now you're beholden to those meetings or those shareholders or those quarterly review meetings or those lawsuits or those clients. You know what I'm saying? So my greatest challenge these days is reining in my ambition. Because the ambition is a runaway horse, and you've just got to hold the reins on it so that I am still seeking growth and progress, but I don't grow it out of my own sort of life, the lifestyle I want to lead, and the mental burdens that I do or don't want to be obligated to. And so it's that never-ending sort of fight to, okay, yes, we want to grow, we want to become better, but we don't want it to run away. Then we become beholden. So it's like a lot of people seek freedom,
right?
And then they create all this wealth, and then all of a sudden they have financial freedom, and then they keep going, and they're the least free person they know. Their pool boy, is freer than they are because they're beholden to this albatross that their ambition has built.
Right.
And now they are a prisoner in obligations.
Well, we talked about Paul J. Meyer. He had someone at his house every day doing something.
Yeah.
He had 40 cars, right, in the warehouse. I had a house at one time, vineyard, pond, though you've been there.
Yeah.
We had someone there every day. You got 6 air conditioning units. One's breaking, something's happening every day.
Yeah.
I don't want that.
Right.
That's not freedom to me.
Exactly.
So, Darren, if you had to say, I'm in the pursuit of...
Better every day.
Okay. So not happiness necessarily.
No.
Okay.
Growing makes me happy.
Okay.
Yeah. Pursuing my art, exercising my creative capability is what makes me happy.
So in pursuit of getting better every day.
Yeah, I just want to be better today than I was
And
yesterday.
that's what's going to then check all the other boxes. Love
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I don't need to do this or that. I mean, literally, if all I do is just try to assure that I'm going to be better today than I was yesterday, like I just did our 31st CEO event. And I told the staff, I said, this is going to be the best ever. We've got to be better this time than we were on the 30th one. And I tell you, every single one of them has been better than the last. And when you do that over and over and over again, you are then creating a experience that is unimaginable to people. Like it is a magical, amazing experience. And people at the end of it are, and these are business owners, right? And who are affected. And not because it's not an emotional event. There's no jumping up and down. There's no, child regression. There's no contemplating your navel. It's business, strategic building, and leadership growth strategies.
How much interactive is it? Is it more you leading
More
and
me
teaching?
leading.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in a theater room, and it's 2.5 days. It's literally 25 years of all I have collected,
and how many
digested,
people?
100 CEOs from all over the world.
Wow.
And it's me taking 25 years and trying to compress into 2.5 days.
Is it a one-time event that they attend?
Yep.
Okay. And then if people want to be part of a more intimate, do you do those anymore? So you were doing a mastermind at one time. You had like 6 billionaires or some crazy number.
It goes back to the simplicity thing.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. But it was like putting 2 weddings on a year.
Yeah.
And everyone had
And that's because of your own, it's like, hey, if I'm going to ask 25 incredible, 6 billionaire, I got to put on a show. It can't just be casual.
Right. And the next one had to be better than the last one.
Yeah.
And it just became, and my wife was the one who was curating the experience.
Right.
And so her processing of stress became a burden on me.
Right.
And it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it to our life and lifestyle. Even though it was 7 figures in revenue, it wasn't worth it. That's not how I want to live. And it wasn't fulfilling the mission. If the mission is to make a positive impact, if it's a positive influencers, there was only 30 people. So it wasn't at scale. I could take the same time, energy, and effort and not only have a far greater impact, but I could also do it financially at a greater clip as well, reallocate it. So, I stopped doing it. Same thing like when I was mentoring one-to-one. They were paying $100,000 for it, but it was like, okay, I don't like the time, energy, and emotional obligation at any price. And so the interesting thing is that the more I have said no to, the simpler I have tried to make my life and business, the bigger it has become.
Right.
It's really insane because I just did it to try to balance life and lifestyle because I don't need to do any of this anymore. So now it's all just a choice. And if you're gonna choose to do it, then do it the way you want to do it. Do it for fun. Do it for it fitting into the lifestyle that you want to lead. So you are no longer obligated to say yes to anything you don't want to do. So then be smart about it.
Right.
But the more I have restricted, the greater our business has grown, and the greater impact we've been having with it. I don't know whether you realize this, Kyle, but I only offer 3 things to the world. I have 3 products to the world. Period.
And I love that.
And we do more revenue than a friend of mine who's in the same adjacent industry who has 120 employees. I have 20. He's got 20% margins. I got 86.
Right.
Right. And so.
And you don't have the brain burn because, again, you're offering something that, again, at Jim Rohn International, people would call very rarely asking for a refund. And we said, no problem. Because we knew there are those type of people because you're giving so much value at a great price.
Right.
If someone's that kind of person, no problem. We'll refund you. And then we take you off the list and we're both good, right?
Yeah, right. And you sleep good at night, right? Yeah.
Right.
So
powerful. So talking about putting on an event like that, it's been a few years back. You had invited me and Heidi to come to Miami for an event you and Georgia put on, 300 people. And again, it was very hands-on. You didn't have a big team. Everything was so well done. And so many people out there are all about delegating. Paul Meyer would call it relegating. People relegate oftentimes. But there is an element about, and I'll tell people, Darren, he's hands-on more than you would think, right? Until you have the right people you really trust that are doing the things. So how do you feel about that? Why is an event like that so hands-on?
It's curated. And it needs to be a unique experience. And so I might not be myself. You're going to, I think these physical events are the very rare opportunities that you have to be with me physically.
Right.
I don't do very many keynotes anymore as well. And I don't do those events anymore. So like our HPF, our High Performance Forum with the CEO is the only
That's the only way people are going to get to you.
One-to-one, right?
Right.
And so, okay, if you're going to come and pack the bag and get on a plane and, check into the hotel to be part of this and make the investment, I'm going to make myself available to you.
Right.
I'm not going to be the diva who runs out the back door and,
Right.
And shows up and high fives from stage. And I'm going to be accessible because during that period of time, even though that to me as an introvert, that's hardcore work.
Right.
Like it's some people who love that. They love the fanfare. They love
Right.
the accolades. They love the interactions with people. To me, it is doing my part to invest in you in that event. And I'm giving all I got to do that. But I just feel like I want you to have a very unique experience. And so I will be very hands-on in terms of curating and orchestrating and planning the creative design of it. And then I will make sure that I've got a team that is going to give you very personal, relational interaction all along the touch points of the experience. Because I think an event is not just what you hear, it's how you feel. And so you've got to curate the feeling that you want to have people have at an event. We're physical beings living in a physical world. Even if we try to, think that we're a digital, virtual, we are still meat sacks.
Right.
With 200,000 years of history, and we are emotional beings who think, not thinking beings who have feelings.
Right.
We are feeling beings who think. And so if you're creating an experience, you want to think through how you want people to feel all along the way. And so, yes, it takes a lot of thought and process.
So I'm going to peel back the curtain a little bit and talk a little bit about marketing. And, back in 93, I talk about the wheel, drew a circle on a sheet of paper. And the thing about the wheel, each spoke as a product or service. And the big question is how you get people on the wheel. Once they're on the wheel, you got to talk to them and build a relationship. And then occasionally give them something to say yes to, right? But the rest of the time you're bringing value, which is very different than a funnel that has an agenda. And so I call it fishing versus hunting. Like you don't know what someone's interested in. You just got to give great content and occasionally say, hey, I got this thing if you're interested. And those who do, and those who don't. And it's beyond simple, but it's incredible. And it has a compounding effect because you're not churning through people.
Right.
You're actually building a relationship. How much would you say you do a hybrid of that with what you do? Like Darren Daily is your communication to the world. You're not selling every day.
No.
But occasionally you say, hey, I got something.
Right. That has been the best thing I've ever done. And I have Jim Rohn to thank for it. And here's why. I was trying to do my best to give back. So I was on boards of a lot of nonprofit organizations to try to contribute not just money, but time and expertise. And I just found myself sitting in meetings where they're going through the financials and where I have nothing to contribute, but I'm burning my time, which is my most important asset. And I'm fastidious about how I spend my time. So I'm like, this isn't serving them or me. So how can I take the same time and take the same money, but have a greater impact, which is what I'm trying to achieve? And I thought, well, what do people want from me that they can't necessarily afford? They want mentorship.
Right.
And so on the 20th anniversary of when I first met Jim, as a give back program, I said to honor, to pay it forward from what Jim paid to me, I'm going to do a year of just free mentoring every single morning. I'm going to pay for the whole production. I'm going to send it to you for free. And it's just going to be about making a contribution into your life for those that are interested. And that's all it was. It was a charitable endeavor motivated to try to reallocate time and resources. but the effect it was having on people. I mean, moms were playing it for their young boys who were fatherless to replace the male influence in their
Right.
son's life.
Wow.
They're listening to it in the car as they're taking their kids to school. It's bringing marriages together because of something that they heard that they, hadn't considered how they might be affecting their spouse, and all these amazing stories started coming back. And it's like, okay, well, all right, I'll just keep doing it. And it was a rhythm of, okay, we'll keep doing it. But then also, the thing that really struck me was how powerful it is to have an anchor in somebody's routine on a daily basis. It becomes a part of their routine. I am embedded into the routine of people's lives. And that's a whole different relationship than an occasional podcast or, a weekly or a monthly magazine subscription. People get up in the morning, make their coffee, sit down, watch Darren daily without conscious thought, as part of their rhythms of life. And it builds an emotional relationship and a connection, and then a community that I wish I could say I was genius. I knew this from the beginning. I knew that this was going to be so profound from a relational community building standpoint. I only figured it out afterwards about the effect it was having, and about how, from an influence standpoint, how profound it is. And so that's why 5 years later, I'm still doing it. Not only is it still an opportunity to deposit into people's lives, but having 350,000 people who are relationally, by their routine in life, connected to you, it has massive influential power.
No, it's incredible. And people talk to me about, hey, should I do a daily like Darren does?
Try it.
I said, here's the key.
Try it.
Here's the key. To do daily, let's not even get into the amount of effort and work and, that's huge. But the bigger point is, if it's not phenomenal or great,
Right.
It's the worst thing you could do.
Right.
Be great once a month. And if you can be great once a month, be great twice a month. If you can do that, then be great once a week. But don't dare try daily unless you can be great every day. What Darren has done, only Darren's the guy I know that could pull that off, where, 6 months later, people are still watching it.
Right. And I have to, just so that to validate that, it is only because of my absolute obsessive work nature that I possibly can pull this off. Every 3 to 5 minute Darren Daily takes 4 or 5 hours for me to develop end to end.
And I know that's true.
Yeah.
I know how much focus you put on, which, again, so many people in my world are huge Darren Daily fans. You spoke at 3 years ago at the 20-year anniversary of the Brian Tracy Success Mastery Academy.
Yeah, great event.
We put together. Thank you. And, so that was my tribe of people that were there, and they all love Darren. So thank you for Darren Daily. I'm a huge fan as well, but that's so powerful.
Well, I appreciate it because I do pour a lot into, because I am cognizant of that. If you're not good one time, if it's like a couple times in a row, people have too many options. They're just going to drift and they're going to, go away. So part of that, I got to make sure it's excellent. I want to make sure that I'm still worthy and everything's still adequate. I'm going to pour into making sure that it is as good as it, but it takes a tremendous amount of effort.
And so part of that feeds into your saying no to so many things.
Yep.
So I asked you to be on my podcast. You said, dude, I haven't done one and hadn't said yes in 3 years, but because of our long time relationship, I'll do it, which I'm so appreciative. But talk about that. So most people think, hey, why aren't you doing a bunch of podcasts? It's great exposure, but why have you said no?
First off, I do want to say that, dude, you have been at these major moments in my life. You are responsible for a lot of this trajectory, whether it's serendipity or coincidence but you were there when I met Jim Rohn. I was there to meet you, and that's how I met Jim, right? And you are also the one that brought me to TSTN, which then ended up leading into Success Magazine. Right. And I have to say also, the reason why every time I came to Dallas and had dinner with you is that your profound wisdom in the whole personal development space is deep, right? And so I was constantly seeking your wisdom about the personal development world, but also the personalities within it, and then the marketing of it. I mean, Jim and the rest of the world who appreciates Jim has you to thank for Jim's reach, for his ability to get his message out, because it was your marketing, it was the running of his company that made Jim's work out in the world possible. Because while Jim was a profound orator and an incredible teacher and an amazing man, he wasn't the business guy that everybody, the way that he'd like to present and package himself. You were the business guy. You made that enterprise possible for him. So anyway, have you to thank.
Well, thank you for that, by the way.
For a lot of that. That's why I said yes to you. I owe you. And you are a major part of my hero's journey.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're an ally on the journey that has had a profound impact on my trajectory.
And I've been honored, and it's been amazing to watch what you're doing. Like, truly, I take a lot of pride in it.
Yeah. And so in order to do a few things really excellent, you got to say no to a lot of things. And it's easier to make one hard no that then makes it easy to make all the rest of the no's easy, right? Okay, so if I don't do any podcast interviews, then all the other no's are easy. If I don't write any forwards to anybody's book, then all the requests that come in are easy to say no to. So what I look for is, how can I make one decision that then makes 1,000 decisions behind it?
Did you figure that out, or did someone else have that that boundary, if you will, that you're like, okay, that's smart. They don't do forwards, so that's brilliant.
I'm sure everything I know I learned from somebody else. I don't think I have had an original thought in my life. So I'm sure that somewhere, somehow I heard or observed or put two and two together. And I'm sure I learned it from somewhere.
But I don't think that many have that many hard no's. I think a lot of them, again, they make it very hard to get to them, but they still leave that ounce of decision, right? So you just draw in that line.
And there's always, except, look,
right,
you're an exception to the rule, but you got to have some rules if you want to maintain, your focus and your flow. And one of the mantras in our business is we want to grow bigger, easier. So we want to grow bigger, yes, but we want to also make everything that we're doing to grow it bigger easier. And there's 3 tenets to that. There's 3 things that affect being able to grow bigger, but make it easier.
Okay.
Number 1 is people. Do you have the right people in the right positions, doing the right things, the right way?
Okay.
Right. So that's recruiting. This is assessing vital functions of your org chart, whether they're in the right positions or not. Doing the right things. Have you aligned their vital metrics to their vital functions that roll up to the goals of the organization? And then doing it the right way, which is the whole insane productivity program. How you optimize individual productivity so that then collectively you're able to do significant revenue with 20 people instead of 120. Right. So people's a big one. And then systems. What are all the dumb things that we're doing over and over, recurring, that's costing time, energy, and effort, that could be optimized through systems, right? And how do you leverage systems in order to create scale? A lot of how we operate as a company, those technologies that are powering our capabilities didn't even exist 3 to 5 years ago. I mean, all the video conferencing that I run a virtual team with, my team is 100% virtual. I work here in my home, and I go to sleep up there, right? And I run a major business with employees all over the country. And what that offers you the opportunity to do is to go find incredible talent, no matter where they live, and keep them emotionally engaged because of the tools and technologies we have today that we didn't have before. Even the direct response marketing mechanisms that we have. I mean, the Facebook marketing we do. I mean, we've figured out how to put $1 in and get 3 out. And it's allowed us to create reach and create revenue that was unheard of 10 years ago. Unheard of.
But you have to pivot too, right? Because they're changing their algorithms.
Absolutely.
How much do you play a role in some of that decision making?
I have 3 vital functions: creating, then presenting what I've created, and marketing. Marketing is one of my 3
And you're very
vital
good
functions.
at it, by the way, right?
Because I put a focus on it.
Right.
I work at it.
Right.
I'm all over it.
You don't have to know how the systems work. You know you have systems. You don't have to know how the sausage making works necessarily, or you don't have to do it.
No,
but
but
you
I
understand
oversee
it, right?
I oversee it all.
And that's where some of the relationships you have too, right? Like when you're connecting with peers that are doing it,
Right.
That's some of the value proposition
No
of
question.
having
I'm getting
relationships that are
ideas and
doing
input and adjustment, improvement, feedback everywhere all the time. The third on, just to complete that, is, and this is the hardest one. Okay,
Right.
everybody understands. Okay, you got to hire right, and you got to put them in the right positions, and they got to be doing the right things. That it's all in alignment and synchronized. And yes, okay, systems can create efficiencies and create scale and all the rest of it. The third one's the hardest, and that is choices. The decisions that you make along the way. All those things that you say yes to means that it is also a no for something else. And you got to figure out what is the highest possible outcome for the allocation of your resources. And it's an analogy to this is that, and we've got it as it was our theme for last quarter was be the lion. And here's why. A mouse can go up to a lion and walk in front of it and so forth, and the lion will disregard it, even though it could kill the mouse and it would be nutrition. But if a lion, who's the greatest killing machine nature has invented, went around chasing and killing mice all day, it would eventually die of malnutrition.
Okay.
So that's the reason why a lion won't even pay it any attention. A lion can only sustain its life and its pride's life on antelope, big game. And it takes a tremendous amount more energy and effort to go and capture and kill an antelope than it does a mouse. But when captured, it will feed its pride for a month or for a week.
Okay.
So same thing in our lives. There are a lot of mice opportunities all around us all the time. And even if it provides a little bit of nutrition, a little bit of revenue, a little bit of reward, you will die of malnutrition over time. Same thing when it comes to these trivial, tasks and opportunities that people pursue. Even if it has a reward, it has some nutritional value, you will die of lack of productivity without even knowing it, even though you were busy running around hunting all day. Every capture didn't provide enough nutrition to sustain you over a longer haul. So the Be the Lion theme was only go after antelope, only big game, only big outcomes, big opportunities, things of high value. Jim would say, don't major in minors.
Right.
Spend major time on major projects, not major time on minor projects. And so many people spend major time on minor outcome opportunities. And so it's about constantly curating those choices to say, because every yes is a no to something else. Every yes you make. I said yes to this. We're going to take 3 hours. I'm saying no to how else I could have spent these 3 hours. So every yes, no matter what it is. So is it a mouse? Yes. Or is it an antelope? And if it's not an antelope, then it has to be no. Or you'll die, or your company will die of malnutrition.
Wow, so powerful. So thinking about that, so we're peeling back the curtain a little bit. So that was powerful. I do think of, with you, there's like the mafia of different, industries. And so in the personal development industry, there's this group of people, they all kind of work together, and I won't go into names, but you've always kind of stayed outside that circle, but you learn from them. So you might network from a brainstorming, let's exchange ideas, but you've never wanted to owe people favors, right? So you build your own thing and you don't ask for a lot, and you don't have to give a lot. So talk a little bit about that. How much do people, because you hear about joint ventures and affiliate programs, do you have a philosophy about that?
I do.
But at the same time, you've learned, I'm sure, from peers, right? You exchange knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
But you're not necessarily trying to
I'll learn from anybody,
do a lot
but
of
not
joint
do
ventures.
business with anybody.
Say that one more time.
I'll learn from everybody, but not do business with anybody.
Okay, got it.
I don't want to be obligated to promote something I don't believe in. One of my superpowers is my ability to communicate, as you said. And the reason is that I can transmute how I feel through my words. And the person on the receiving end, whether on camera or in an audience, can feel it. So I can affect you with emotion through the words. You can feel that it is authentic. So that is a superpower. But the downside of that is that you'll feel it if I'm faking it.
Right.
I can't play poker.
Right.
My tell is my entire body.
I'm the same way.
I just reek with a bluff.
Right.
And so I cannot sell anything I don't wholeheartedly believe in. And so I don't want to be obligated to promote something of somebody else's that I don't wholeheartedly believe in. And because I had to curate the success industry for so long to decide who did or didn't go in Success Magazine and such, there's not a lot of good stuff out there.
Yeah.
98% of it is a bunch of happy horse shit and hokey and a lot of charlatans, a lot of just people theorizing, regurgitating a bunch of crap, talking about stuff they've never done. So I don't have a whole lot of credibility for a lot of what's out there. So I don't want to be obligated to have to promote it, to endorse it.
So again, it's one of those that it's just no, right?
Yeah.
So it's, I think, similar to the podcast. Your default answer is no. So that way it's not something you get asked 100.
Right. Which is also, so no, I'm not going to promote your thing. So I'm obviously not going to ask you to promote mine.
Right.
Like that, the downside to that is that I can't ask you to do something that I won't do in reciprocation.
Right.
So I'm fine with that.
Right.
I'll do it on my own.
And the key to make that work is you have to have great stuff, which you do.
Right.
If you have the ability to go do it yourself, just go do it. Right.
It's easier. There's no drama. You don't got to deal with people's personalities and their expectations. And it just, to me, it's an easier way to live.
So having been the publisher for a number of years of Success Magazine, do you have some of the, again, you interviewed so many amazing people. Do you have 2 or 3 that really stand out to you?
Jim was my first interview for Success.
I remember that.
I remember when we were
did
at an event and we got a separate ballroom, where that was the first.
And little did we know he only had a couple more years left, right? He was not feeling well.
No.
And he couldn't quite put his finger on it.
Yeah. But I wanted Jim to be the first. And he was the first interview I did for Success that got bound into the magazine and so forth. And you made that possible. You made that happen because you were managing his business at the time. So that's always just special just from that case. And then I interviewed Paul J. Meyer, who we've talked about as well. All the icons and tycoons are all great. The Jack Welch's and Steve Wynn and Musk's and all that's great. But the unexpected, if you were to say, what's the unexpected person that took you by surprise or just kind of hit you at a moment when you needed to hear something? It was Louis Zamperini. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the 94-year-old World War II American hero. And that's, people use the word hero too much these days, but the guy was truly an incredible, heroic human being. I mean, he was in the Berlin Olympics when Hitler presided and ran. He was invited to meet Hitler and then in World War II shot down, lost at sea 47 days, survived by pulling sharks out of the water and eating its liver and catching albatross that came on his raft and eating the heart, and then captured by the Japanese because he's a quasi-celebrity, having been an Olympic athlete. They tortured him mercilessly to try to break him so that he would speak out against American policies on camera to propagandize him. And he wouldn't break, no matter how they brutalized. And when you read the story, when you watch the movie, you're like, I don't know how anybody could endure. Right? I mean, I think there's a lot of people that I met who've done some incredible things. And I think, in that situation, I might have been able to do that. Yeah. In his situation, undoubtedly, there's no question I wouldn't have been able to get as 10% of what he endured. And so a really remarkable man. Here he is, 94 years old, talking with him like this. And he just still has that like fire raging in his eyes, this unconquerable will. Right. And then one of the last questions I asked him, I said, Louis, if you're knee to knee here with a young person and, they're just feeling like giving up, And what would you say to encourage them so that they just go on? And he looked at me and he's, give up? Why would they give up? Don't they have any self-respect? Like it didn't even, he didn't understand the concept of giving up, like legitimately. He wasn't being trite. He was, and I remember it just sort of hit me, and he just went on about, you got to be hardy. You got to do whatever it takes to get the job done. It just had this fortitude of spirit. Ever since then, whenever things were difficult, right? All these first world problems we run into, where you're so overwhelmed or stressed or whatever, I would think of Louis.
Yeah.
It's like, this is nothing. Look at what the human will can do if given the chance to persevere, right? If you just get over your stupidity and get through it. And so he was momentous for me because how often I think when I hit a wall on some perceived stress or problem, I think back to Louis. It's like, this is nothing. I could do this and I need to stop bitching about it.
Wow, that's so powerful. So as an entrepreneur, when I meet entrepreneurs, one of the challenges, inherent challenges, is in pursuit of making a living, building a business, they're not always so good about then keeping it. In fact, Brian Tracy was talking about yesterday that one of the early pieces of advice Lloyd Conant gave him at Nightingale Conant is make sure you keep what you make.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk a little bit about your personal investment philosophy and also just, again, story time, 2006, I'm talking to you about, hey, come help us with TSTN. And Mark Sparks became a really good friend of yours. I know I saw an email yesterday, right? Yeah. But you were like, I'm building this tech company. I want to create $100 million tech company. I said, well, just come. You never know, right? Just come hang out. And so I know that's in the backdrop. In fact, I'll tell another Darren story. You talked one time about you're pretty shrewd with your money, personally and business-wise. And you said, listen, I just want to have such fundamentals that if I ever was going to do a big deal with a financial private equity firm or whoever it is, they could look at my financial portfolio and say, this guy is good with his money. So that's a philosophy, right? So if you don't mind, just talk a little bit about that.
Meeting Warren Buffett. Rule number 1, never lose money.
Okay.
Took that to heart.
Okay.
And so I am the most conservative you can imagine with money. It's all in banks. I don't even have a dime in the financial stock market. It's in
That's not easy. That's not easy when you've made your kind of bank to now.
You got to put it over many banks.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. Real estate of my own personal use, because I don't really like dealing with the mental burden of rental property. But my own homes and cash.
So you have how many homes?
3.
Right. 3 really nice homes, by the way.
Yeah. And because here's the thing. Getting 10%, getting 30% return is not going to affect my life or lifestyle at all.
Right.
Losing 10% or losing 30% is going to affect me mentally and emotionally. You know what I mean? It's just like, or just having to even think about it or having to deal with it or having to sign the papers in order to transfer it. I don't want to have to deal. That's a friction I don't have to deal with anymore. So the whole goal is don't lose money. Oh, but you're losing money in inflation. Fine. But I don't have to think. I don't have to manage. I don't have to worry. And we've got more than we possibly can spend for the rest of our lives. So why am I worried about taking productive time in growing and exercising my art and making a positive impact in other people's lives? I'd have to take time from that to go over here to manage and to assess and to evaluate and to transfer and all the rest. I just don't.
So your personal philosophy is don't lose money, but also don't waste money too, right? So you're very, like you said,
I don't
shrewd
have planes
with your money.
and boats and I don't have ridiculous expenditures. I mean, we live a very nice, very comfortable. We enjoy the finer things of life, but it isn't to, it isn't disproportionate.
Yeah, you don't just go throw money away. You don't go to Vegas and
I don't donate to the Church of MGM. No, I've got friends who do it and they have a blast. And if that's where you get, I'm not going to
And then at the same time, we talked a little bit before we started recording about potential tax type of things you can do when you make a lot of money. And those are things you have pros that handle that stuff for you.
Right. Exactly. And sure. I mean, if you want to optimize what you are keeping from the productivity you're putting out in the world, then you should. But I mean, as I mentioned to you, Jim taught me, be a happy taxpayer.
Right.
It's the goose that's laying the golden eggs. Sure, it's a fat goose. Sure, it eats too much, but don't we all, right? So like, just be a happy taxpayer. Like, pay your taxes, sleep at night. I don't want to ever. And then I also, as I mentioned to you, the only thing I can do now is screw this up.
Right.
Right. All I could do is screw it up, and doing something dumb with, trying to, there's a difference between tax avoidance and tax evading, right? And so that would just be screwing it up unnecessarily. So just pay the money.
And I remember it's 2006, and I actually sold my companies in 2007. So we were talking, and I had a couple investments I was doing. One of them was in a horse farm, Rodeo Drive, Kentucky. And I did it actually more for the people that were involved. Harold Hamm, who owned Continental Resources, one of the richest Americans. I'm sitting on the finish line of the Kentucky Derby, and my wife and daughter, they're into horses. And you're like, hey, what do you know about that business? I'm like, not much. And you say Warren Buffett. So, and you were right. First year I made 17%. Second year, the 2008 crisis happens and banks call in loans, and that was a dumb investment. And so what I hear you saying is you're not ambitious to turn your money into fortunes. That would almost be greed. But on the other hand, you don't want to throw it away. You don't want to lose money.
Don't lose it. I know people are going to watch this and go like, you got to put overalls on your money. And you got to make your money work for you. And,
But sometimes that's a risk. The more you want to put it to work, the more risk you're taking.
It costs time, mental energy, life force, and mental, even just to obligation. I'm going to say anxiety or stress, but just the mental obligation of overseeing that. So it has a cost. So I don't need any more. So I don't have, that isn't a problem to solve for, A. And then the second thing is, so don't lose it.
Right.
The second thing that Warren Buffett taught me when asking, in the late 90s, everybody thought you were an old fogey and had lost it because you weren't investing in all these tech companies.
Right.
And then the internet blew up, and all of a sudden, everybody's calling you a genius.
Right.
Why didn't you invest in any of those tech companies? And he says, look, it wasn't that I didn't think any of those companies were good companies or not. He said, it's because of this. And he made this symbol right here. He says, see this? This is my circle of competency. This is what I know for sure. Mm-hmm. And I only invest in companies that are inside this circle. And tech company is not something that I understand. I don't understand the variables. I don't know what where the trap doors are. I don't know how to make it work. It was outside my circle. So it wasn't that it wasn't a good company. It was just outside my circle. So I have figured out what my circle is of competency, where my greatness lies, where my genius lies, where my art lies. And financial investing and management is not in my circle.
Right.
So instead of doing what I'm not great at or even like or enjoy, if I don't need more, just don't. Go back to the first one. Go back to rule number 1. Don't lose it.
Right.
So just keep it safe.
Right.
So again, it's not for everybody, but here's what I will say.
But you know how to make money, and that's the key.
Right. You're right. None of this is possible. None of this is possible if you can't you can't make money.
Right.
And that's there's 2 things here that I think are wisdoms that I picked up from wealthy people. The first one is, if you make your money entrepreneurially, then your business is a risk. You're at risk by being an entrepreneur.
Right.
So if you make your money as a business owner, which is risky, and then you invest it after you pay the taxes, your proceeds, in risky investments, you got risk and risk. It's not a matter of if, it's only a matter of when, which is why a lot of people become wealthy and then lose it because they became wealthy taking risks in their business, and then they invested it in risk and then they lost it. So if you earn your money through risk, do not invest it with risk. Keep it. Okay. That's the first thing. The second thing is the more I got around wealthy people, the more I realized they do not invest in the stock market. And they do not make risky investments. I mean, even Richard Branson, always protect the downside.
Right.
People think all these wealthy people are these ones that pursued risk and it paid off. They're the most risk adverse. Like even Warren Buffett, he won't invest in something until he already knows what the control variable is to making it more successful than it is. If he can't bring the resources, the relationships, the infrastructure, or the foundational elements that will then solve for the core thing that will make it grow further from there, he's basically guaranteeing the growth of his investment before he makes the investment or he doesn't make the investment. He wants to know that he has direct control over the investment growing before it's zero. He's mitigated the risk. He has assessed what the risk is. He knows he's got the solution for that potential risk. Then he makes the investment.
So your philosophy is based on a lot of education. You're not just flippantly saying, I don't understand, I'm not going to do it. You've studied it and you've made the decision. And I remember, again, more that 2006 time when you were being very entrepreneurial, that you had your hand in multiple businesses, right? And again, a temptation.
Another lesson learned.
Temptation for entrepreneurs, they start making money and now the door, the phone's ringing, the door's knocking, a lot of hardship cases, a lot of almost get rich quick type cases. So you did back off some of these businesses. Just too much of a brain fry.
That's two hard learned lessons. If somebody wants to get them earlier than I got them by watching or listening to this is valuable. So when I came back from Waco after doing a turnaround for Paul J. Meyer's company, I did a bunch of angel investing and invested money into other people's companies.
Right.
And I will no longer invest in anybody else's company, period. It's just a hard no on all. If I am not involved in the business and don't have control over its greater success, I'm not investing in anybody else's companies. The chances of success are so slim, and your ability to affect whether it's successful or failure is out of your control. In my personal, the way I think, operate, and live, it isn't worth the stress. So I don't invest in anybody else's.
And so
company.
back to that hard no, again, if you were open, that'd be 10 hours a week of just looking at deals, or 20.
Right.
So having a hard no also saves you a lot of time.
Undoubtedly. So I won't invest in anybody else's companies is one hard learned lesson. The second one is I will never have partners again. Now I'm talking 50-50 partners.
Right.
I might have one of my key players, have a equity stake, or I offer growth stock to all of my team members, but I'm in control. Right. I will never have 50-50 partner relationships again. And I had to learn that the hard way. And I had some excellent partner relationships, but I had some horrible ones as well. And partnerships, it's not a matter of if, it's only a matter of when. When you have two human beings who are living two separate movies, two separate lives, there's going to come a point, even if there's a love fest in the beginning and you agree on everything in the beginning, there's spouses, and then there's in-laws, and then there's, greed, and it's not a matter of if, it's only a matter of when it's going to go bad. So and a lot of times people choose to do partnerships because of fear.
Right.
They don't have the confidence enough to do it themselves.
Exactly. Or they're wanting kind of something for nothing. It's back to, I'm hoping to get more than I can give.
Right.
So
I want to ride on your bandwagon and cut your coattails. And
I'm in agreement. And here's the other thing. And I have several people I give this advice to. They have a company, they have a great team, and they feel like they have to attract people by giving them equity. And as you know, at my company, I had profit sharing. And I had some $15 an hour people making six figures through profit sharing, but they weren't equity partners.
Right.
And what happens, people, get cancer, people go through divorces, things happen. And again, there's legal things that can happen. So I'm a big believer in profit sharing.
I agree.
And things like that.
Wholeheartedly.
But, and the thing is, when you own the company, you know you're going to have to deal with the bad, right? The good and the bad. Sometimes these partners won't deal with the bad.
Right.
You're the only one writing the check
Right.
when something bad happens.
Right. I hope people hear that.
I do too.
Because
It's huge.
they get into partnerships because they think it's going to
But
be.
it's usually a little bit of a greed factor. They want
Yep.
something for nothing, right?
Or fear.
Yeah,
It's greed or fear.
greed.
You know, there's fear. I don't think I can do it myself, so I feel
It's very similar to the joint venture conversation we had, right? You're hoping to get something more than you have confidence you can build on your own.
Right. True. Yeah. But the dynamics of the psychological, emotional dynamics over time of a partnership is undoubtedly going to go bad.
So we talked about Paul J. Meyer going to his funeral, and we both had the conversation, you know, Jim's not feeling well. Jim Rohn was not doing well. And I think that played into this tribute video that, you know, Reed and Stuart and yourself and I, you know, decided to put together for Jim before he passed. And it was incredible to have Zig and Brian and, you know, all of Jim's peers, but also people that used to work with him, some good friends, his accountant, you know, this group of people over 4 days of filming in Dallas and Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I got to deliver that to him a month before he passed.
Yeah.
And it was incredible.
You're the guy that made that happen. You're the guy that pulled
Well,
that off. And that was all your work. That was a tremendous amount of work on your part.
Well, I will say it was a group effort. And then the memorial itself, which was a couple of months later, where Tony Robbins and Brian and Dennis and yourself, right? That was a very special moment. So yeah, just talk a little bit about Jim's passing and the tribute. And again, you know, when I think of having sold the companies in 2007, and most people don't know, I had owned Jim Rohn International.
Right.
That's a whole long story. But one of the things I was really grateful for when I think about selling was the vision you guys at Success had to honor Jim with this memorial. Yeah. I don't think, I really, being honest, I don't think I would have had that vision.
Right.
Because Jim was a very private guy. I honored that privacy. And I just don't think I would have gone there. And it turned out to be something people still talk about today.
You know, Jim, as I told you, had a profound impact in my life. And one of the things that's in the dedication of the compound effect, which is dedicated to Jim, because essentially it's his fundamental, you know, philosophy that I practiced and then come to re-communicate. And he taught me, you know, talk about things that matter to people who care. And at that tribute and going into it, I made a commitment that I will help carry the torch of Jim Rohn. That, first of all, I will give credit where credit's due. He was a source code for me. He was the guy that was there when I needed it the most. You know, I'm not saying he's the Messiah or Jesus Christ or anything. I'm just saying he was the guy I resonated with. He's the guy that communicated what I needed to hear at a time I needed to hear it, and has been a comfort and a reminding and a flushing source. I listen to his material to this day. It is like going home. You know, I mean, it's like when you go home for the holidays, re-listening to Jim is just a grounding experience for me. And I'm not saying it's for everybody. Jim's not for everybody, right? I mean, I remember the first time I heard him, like, what is that voice about? That's annoying. And now it is a song. You know, it's a familiar song that harkens back the best of me. So and going into that tribute, I just made a commitment. I will help carry the torch of Jim Rohn and his material. And a lot of people say, you know, hey, you're you know, whenever they associate me with Jim or his work, I'm like, Jim was the OG. Jim's the original gangster. There will never be another like Jim. He was the master. He was the orator. All I want to do is to continue to amplify what he brought to the world. I'm doing what I'm doing and communicating what I'm communicating in my way, but I'm telling you a lot of that source material is right from the good man himself. And Jim would say the same. He would say that, you know, this stuff is ancient. You know, these philosophies, these fundamentals are old, right? I'm not manufacturing new antiques. So, that tribute cemented for me. It's like, I'm going to do everything I can to continue to carry the torch, to be a beacon of ongoing influence for Jim and his work. And I'm not the only one. He's affected, you know, thousands of people's lives, and you're doing it, and others are also continuing to remind people about his influence. But, you know,
Well, I think he's bigger than he's ever been today. And part of it, I mean, you mentioned 1.5 billion people you're reaching, and you always talk about Jim. I recently saw Tony Robbins, and Tony will tell stories of people he coaches, Bill Clinton or an Olympian. But the only person he actually gives credit to of being an influence that I heard was Jim, and it's multiple times. Eric Worre, Hal Elrod, this huge list of people, Robert Helms. But, I'll always say that, because of Darren, because of Tony, because of these group of people, I can meet millennials and they know who Jim Rohn is, right? And so I really appreciate everyone. And of course, no one's going to do it if it's not authentic, right?
Exactly.
It's the real story.
Tony's doing it because it's true.
It's true, right?
Yeah.
It's true. And so it's amazing to see the impact Jim's having.
Yeah.
So Darren, you've written multiple books, right? The Compound Effect probably being one of the more popular ones in the entrepreneurial roller coaster.
Sold over 1 million copies.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So are you ambitious to do another book anytime soon?
No. Books hard.
Books are done. They are.
Yeah, it's hard. No, tip for people who are in the personal development world that I learned from Paul J. Meyer. So I have to credit him with this. He said, look, you can take intellectual property and you can put it into a book and sell it for $15. You can put it into an audio training program and you can sell it for $50. You can put it into audio with DVDs at the time and you could sell it for
$500,
$250. Yeah, $500, right? Or you could put it into an academy system and you could sell it for $5,000.
Right.
Same material, same information.
So true.
Just repackaged into different, formats. And so why would I take new art and put it into the least valuable medium, which is a book? Now, if I didn't have a book, then you should have a book. Okay. But I got a book.
Right.
And the interesting thing about the Compound Effect is the Entrepreneur Roller Coaster was my second book. And when I saw how successfully impactful the Compound Effect was like, well, shit, I kind of just put it together. I'm really going to work at this next one. I'm going to really make it great. It didn't have the same lightning in a bottle impact that the Compound Effect did. And it did. We sold 100,000 copies in 2 weeks, but that was sheer marketing.
Right.
But the Entrepreneur Roller Coaster book is like most books. If you're not marketing it, it's not selling.
But we'll say this, it is a niche, but that niche is your audience.
Yeah.
So it's the right audience for you.
Right. Without promoting the Compound Effect, it continues to sell on its own.
Right.
And that is a rarity in books. If you're not promoting it, you're not selling it. But that has taken a life of its own. So I already got it. Now I just need to double down on it.
And I'll say the audio book or the audio series, Compound Effect, I've listened to 50 times.
Yeah.
Amazing stories. And I've stayed away from a lot of that in this podcast because people are familiar with that. But if they're not, definitely go get the Compound Effect, the book, and the audio is incredible.
Yeah, I personally, obviously, I like the audio version of everything because you hear the person feel and express it rather than just read words on page.
And you talk about Jim's influence, but it is totally your story. I mean, you have so many vignettes, right? And just stories that just really hit home. Yeah. Well done. Truly well done.
Thank you.
I've always said Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, and Darren. I mean, those are the three biggest influence of what I don't listen to a lot of stuff. Yeah. I keep mine pretty honed in.
I do that too. I isolate my attention, and I'd rather rinse and repeat and make something deeper than to get a bunch of scattered voices in my head. But the thing I'm working on now, Kyle, that I'm super excited about, I've been working on for a year and a half. The problem I have is I have this amazing group of A-team members, and I mean, 85% female, 80+% millennial, incredible human beings, deeply passionate about what it is that we do. But I needed to grow them into leadership. Okay. They're contributors, they're key role players, but I need them to grow into leadership. So I went out and looking for a leadership program. And there's like this little piece, some of what I do agree with, some of what I don't. And it's like nothing was holistic. Nothing was a real development program for leadership for the modern world, because the world's changed. So most leadership is written towards a 20th century reality, command and control, top down. So Anyway, I got frustrated and I went and started creating one so that I could take my own team through it. Year and a half in the development. It won't be for another quarter or two, but it's called Hero's Journey. I went and I bought the URL years ago. I've been simmering on this for more than 5 years.
Okay.
And it's called A Growth Adventure to Becoming a Modern Day Leader. And so, because leadership today is so radically different than it was 20 years ago, because we have 5 generations of the workforce at the same time. There are more, the labor force of women is greater than it is for men, because 1 out of 5 families, the parent at home is the father. That's a whole new phenomenon. Diversity is increasing. So what's missing, what hasn't been trained, is emotional intelligence. How do you develop the emotional intelligence as a leader in order to create collaboration and synergy amongst 5 different generations, which were acculturated through radically different eras in time? You know, when you got how a boomer grew up versus how a Gen Zer or a millennial, their worldview, their perspective is radically different. How do you get them to collaborate? How do you motivate each of them uniquely? How do you be a different leader for the different types of people that you have in a very diverse workforce? And how do you build that around systems of growth and in a very complex, highly competitive work environment? Now we're global, technology's influenced, the communication platforms, and so that's the thing that I've been working on. You can see I'm excited about it. So it's 5. The hero's journey is 5 stages. So you grow developmentally through 5 different stages. It's 21 modules. So it's 4 modules per stage, and just following kind of the path that Joseph Campbell outlined in what is the hero's journey is the hero's journey in the growth of becoming a leader. Because really, what is the hero's journey, right? The hero's journey is where a person in the ordinary world gets a call to adventure, and they leave the ordinary world, and then they go out into this mystical, magical world where they're having to face threshold guardians, and they're having
and
to
usually
face
there's some kind of challenge.
right. They're facing exactly. They're facing the dragons. They're facing these obstacles, and they go through this journey to eventually make it on the other side, with the only objective being developing the power and wisdom to come back to bestow it onto your fellow man. So really, the hero's journey, even in the classic sense, is really growing as a leader, as a person of influence, as a person of consequence, so that you can develop the wisdom, the insight, and now to then bestow it to others to help them on their life hero's journey. So that's what I've been working on, and I think it's going to redefine all that I do.
And how's that going to come out? Is it an event and then a
It'll be a digitally delivered curriculum, because the objective is you're running a company, you've got 20 employees. Right. It is for you to go through the program with your team. Right. So you're facilitating the journey with your team.
Have you started it yet?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because what a model you've done in the past is you do an event, right?
We'll kick it out.
You come back.
I've done that.
Okay.
I've captured the source material of the core, and then I package the lead in and then the training component on the back end.
That's a little formula I always give people, is to test small. I always ask 2 questions. Number 1, do you have an audience? You do.
Yeah.
Number 2, do you know if people want it? Well, if they don't, it's like, well, do a little small event and see if people want it.
I did. That's exactly what I did. A friend of mine has a big company in Topeka, Kansas, but he has his actual training room inside his campus, and it's beautiful. And we put on an event for 150 of his employees, and filmed it, and it was sensational in terms of the impact it had on. So I was like, okay, we've got the source, we've got the centerpiece of it. Now we need to then make it a development program. Like, how do you create an implementation program so that it leads a team of people progressively sequenced over time in a developmental fashion, so it alters behavior over time.
Wow, so powerful. Well, hey, I know we're probably up against it. Darren, this has been amazing. So if people want to find you, if they want to get Darren Daily, what's the best way to?
DarrenDaily.com.
Very good.
Or you just go to our website, DarrenHardy.com.
And then your high performance productivity course, which is incredible.
Insane
I've been through it.
Productivity.
Yep. I've been to the event. I've got the online course. I've heard you talk about it. So many people in my world have been part of that. How can people find that and be part of it?
InsaneProductivity.com. And it is my obsession, having had to be an achiever from, to make my dad proud, was always how can I do more in less time, more efficiently. And that's just been an obsession I've had since I was 8 years old. Then given the opportunity to be up close and personal with the greatest achievers of our lifetime because they wanted to be in success or they wanted to be on, some of our programs, that's what I've distilled. That was the obsession I was seeking every time. And so I took that 25-year journey of finding those answers, applying them, trying them, see if it works in the real world with real people, not just people already at a uber level success. And the best of that is what is the curriculum inside Insane Productivity.
And what I love about it, you begin with your values first. Mm-hmm. Like, what life do you want to live, right? Mm-hmm. Most people begin at the bottom and what they're trying to accomplish. And you begin with who do you want to be? What are you about? What's important to you?
Right.
And then from there you build. And you are an example of that, right?
Yeah.
You have created the life you want to live. And again, a lot of that's by saying no to a lot of things, giving up one thing to have something else. And all that's in the program. Yep. You walk people through all of that.
Yep. It's the distillation. It's almost like, you can learn it the hard way, or you could just sort of get the answers to the test. You could skip the 25-year hard labor to put it all and figure it all and try it all, and you could just get the answers to the test. It'll definitely accelerate somebody, becoming victorious on their own hero's journey.
Right. So if someone, and I know you said you're not speaking much, I've had you speak at my events. It's like a mic drop. I mean, you nail it. It's incredible. If someone was interested in trying to get you to come speak at their convention or an event, what's the best way? Is there an email they can send, or?
You would just go, I think at DarrenHardy.com, there's a contact us. And I think that goes to the appropriate person. Kylie and my team is the one who facilitates all those.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Kylie. So any closing words for the audience?
No, I just, keep pursuing better every day. It's amazing that if all you focus on is what are the small things, the little things that I can do today to be better today than I was yesterday, and then the accumulated compound effect of that. You look up 3 years and you're like, oh my God, look at the you couldn't have planned for it. You couldn't have set a goal for what the accumulated compound effect of small little improvements kept aware and focused on every day has in one person's life. Everybody's looking for the big idea. They're looking for the big leap. And in reality, the accumulated compound effect of those small improvements made daily will far exceed what you could plan for, I promise.
And that's worked for you.
Unbelievable.
I was going to ask you about your morning routine. Can you give us a minute on your routine?
It's not just what it is, it's the fact that you have one, right? If there's only a couple of times in your day when you can control it emphatically, because no matter what you plan for, like what's the best way to make God laugh, tell him your plans, and then in Murphy's Law, if it can't happen, it will happen. In the middle of the day is always going to be chaos and unexpected situations. But there's 2 times when you first get up in the morning and just before you go to bed. And so what you want to do is be very thoughtful about what you program into those 2 times of your day, because that's your bookend. So whatever behaviors you want to make sure you're being consistent with, put them predictably in those 2 parts of your day. So when I get up, people think it's crazy, but I get up, coffee, I sit down, and I watch my Darren Daily. Now I have written it, I have performed it, I have edited it, I have overseen its distribution. So it's not new information, but it's one thing to think about that day, right? Instead of the swirling of all the things, it's like, this is the one thing I'm going to think about. I got my Darren Daily journal. I take notes on the content I'm delivering. I know it seems crazy.
I love it.
But then it's just all it does is put in my reticular activating system, scanning the environment of abundant possibilities, of endless possibilities, one thing to focus on, one thing to look for or to be aware of that day. That's that small little improvement compounded over time. So, I do that, and then I do one MVP, my most valuable priority for 90 minutes.
Okay.
And one head down, non-distracted, focus on the thing that's most important to you in 90 minutes accomplishes before 8 a.m. in the morning what most people will do in 3 days.
Wow.
Because they don't ever take isolated time to work on their most valuable priority without distraction at any point of their day. And the chances to have it happen later are significantly less. Of course, you try to get 3 or 4 of those in throughout the day, but the one in the morning is assured. And so
when you're traveling,
I will get up early as it takes to have that morning routine happen.
okay, wow.
I will.
So
Yeah.
now you work out later in the day. We've talked about that in the past because you want to get some stress off. Part of your exercise is stress.
And you have to figure out your rhythm, right? The way your system works. Like in the morning, my mind's on fire. My body's like, let's have another cup of coffee. You know, it's like it takes a while to rev up my body, but my mind's like, it's the clearest it's going to be all day in that morning time. In the evening, I've been sitting here all day, and my body's like, get the hell out of the chair. We got to go work this out because you're killing me here. And my brain's like, I'm fried. I can't do anymore. So it's the perfect. But for other people, it's the opposite.
I'm with you on that. The key is making sure it's still blocked out, right?
Right.
The longer the day goes, the more likely that you might not do it.
Right.
So I just, again, for the sake of our audience, I want to share one quick thing that you shared with me in the past. You said, hey, if I'm writing a book or if I have a big project, you gave me a phenomenal formula. You said about 2 to 3 hours a day, 2 to 3 times a week for 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
And you would just block it out. And that's how you wrote the compound effect.
Yep.
And so powerful formula.
Yeah. I mean, success compression, how can you block out times where you go wholly deep into something? Because if you're doing things in fits and starts, you never are able to get into the zone, into the mode. So you want to be able to find chunks of isolation so that you can get to the momentum, right? But not too long. Like you can't just, I'm just going to take X period of time, because there is a point of diminishing returns,
Right.
where cognitively you're creatively spent. The tank is empty. So it's better to find shorter blocks more often than it is to just say, I'm going to take 3 months and go into the woods and write. That actually is not that successful. You're going to be constantly trying to pull out of the empty tank the whole time.
Right. So powerful. Well, hey, the good news is I didn't get around to most of my questions, which means we came up with new and better questions. Thank you, my friend. It's been an honor to have you today, and it's your beautiful home.
Thank you very much.
You gave me the tour, and it's amazing. And I could ask you a bunch of questions about that to share with the group as I look at the rhino in the background.
Yeah.
But thank you so much.
My pleasure, buddy. Thank you for all
appreciate
you've
you,
done.
man.
Yeah.
You're doing amazing things. It's so fun to watch.
Yeah. Having fun doing it. So it's all good.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah.